One of my earliest memories is sitting in the back seat of my family car on a cold December night in 1992. We were driving from Droitwich to my nan's house in Rover for a Christmas party. I'm 4 years old. I'm in the back seat with my older brother. I can still remember the fuzzy fabric of the seats against my hands, the orange glow of the streetlights passing across the windows down the M5. Simply Red playing quietly on the radio. It felt warm, safe, ordinary. But what I didn't understand back then was the simple car journey was connected to something much bigger. Everything in our lives seemed to lead back to one place, Longbridge. My dad had already worked there for nearly 30 years. He spent another 13 there before it all came crashing down. That factory wasn't just where he worked. It was the reason my parents met, the reason we lived where we did, the reason we drove the cars we drove, the reason food was on the table, the reason our entire childhood existed in a shape that it did. I wasn't just born into a family, I was born into Longbridge. And this story isn't one about a car factory. It's about what it felt like growing in the shadows of one of Britain's industrial giants, and what happened when the shadows suddenly disappeared forever. My dad started at Longbridge in 1963. He was 16 years old, just a lad from Coleshill walking through the factory gates for the first time. Back then, getting a job at the Austin wasn't just employment. It was a future, a promise, a life. Work hard, stay loyal, and you'll have security for life. Longbridge was booming. At its peak, more than 25,000 people worked there. The place was enormous, a city within a city. It had its own power station, its own railway, its own social clubs, its own identity. The sound of the factory hooters echoed across Birmingham like church bells. And for thousands of families, Longbridge became the centre of their entire world. My dad was proud to work there, and that pride followed him home. You could see it in the cars he owned over the years. A Rover 214, a purple Rover Coupe, then a silver one, a red Freelander, a sky blue Rover 75, a racing blue MG ZR, a racing blue MG ZT, and finally the black MG ZS. Even when Rover was struggling, he never stopped believing in the cars, never stopped defending them, and honestly, neither did I. Because when you grow up around Rover families, these cars become part of your life story. My navy blue Rover 200 R3 was my pride and joy until I crashed it in 2010. Then came my sky blue Rover 25. I loved that car, until the head gasket failed and sent it to the scrapyard. After that, I had a Rover Streetwise. People laugh at Rover now. People dismiss the company as a joke. But to us, these weren't just old cars. They were memories. Family holidays, school runs, late night drives, Dad teaching me things, music on the radio, the smell of worn Rover interiors. Rover wasn't just something we owned, it was woven into our lives. And in 1986, Longbridge shaped our family even more deeply, because that's where my mum met my dad. She started working in the finance department, and like so many couples before them, Longbridge brought them together. A year later, my older brother was born. Then I arrived. We became what you called a Rover family, or maybe even Rover babies. Every morning, my dad drove down the A38 back to Longbridge, back to the place that had shaped almost every part of his adult life. And as a child, the factory just felt permanent, like it was always be there. But as I got older, things began to change. At first, it was subtle. The conversations at home became quieter, more serious, with the words like strikes, disputes, layoffs and British Leyland start creeping into conversations. As a kid, you don't fully understand economics, but you understand fear. You hear that in my parents' voice. You felt it in the atmosphere of the home. And during the 1970s and 80s, Longbridge was slowly beginning to crack. Britain's car industry was struggling. Foreign competition was growing. Factories overseas were becoming more efficient. Meanwhile, Britain's industrial giants seemed trapped in an endless conflict. The company name kept changing. Austin Rover, the Rover Group. Each new name felt like another attempt to stop the bleeding. Then came British Aerospace, then BMW. And with every takeover came fresh promises. Promises of investment, promises of stability, promises that everything would be okay. But underneath it all, people knew the ground beneath them was shifting. Even our family life reflected it. My mum eventually left Rover with the very bitter memories of the place. The stress, the uncertainty, the politics. Longbridge had brought my parents together, but over time it also brought anxiety and disappointment into people's lives. And yet, despite all of that, my dad never stopped loving Rover. Never. Even as the company struggled, even as the jokes about Rover got worse, even as the British public turned against the brand, he stayed loyal. Because millions of people today dismiss Rover as just a bad company. But every car manufacturer has built bad cars. Every company has failures. The difference is that Rover was never forgiven. People mock the cars, mock the workers, mock the decline. But they never forget something. Because behind those badges were just ordinary people. Men and women who spent their entire lives building something they believed in. By the early 2000s, I was old enough to understand what was happening. The atmosphere around Longbridge felt different, like they was waiting for something to happen, for bad news. And then in 2004, I had a chance to do some work experience at Longbridge myself. Walking through those gates felt surreal. The place had been part of my family story for decades. Now I'm standing inside it. I will talk about that in the future episodes, as I personally think that deserves an episode of its own. But even then, you could feel it. The uncertainty, the tension, the feel that the factory was running out of time. By that point, Longbridge felt like a once great heavyweight fighter still trying to stand. People were exhausted, but they still cared. Then the thing many people never understood about Rover workers, they cared deeply. These weren't people turning up for a paycheck. For many of them, Longbridge was their identity. Their fathers had worked there, their grandfathers had worked there. Some families had given generations to that factory. And yet, from the outside, the media often reduced everything to punchlines. Bad cars, strikes, failures. But if you actually spoke to the workers, you saw something very different. You saw pride, loyalty, skill, humour, resilience. You saw people desperately trying to save the world they loved. Then came 2005, and suddenly the rumours became reality. The deal with the Chinese company SAIC collapsed. MG Rover was finished. I remember watching the news coverage and feeling sick. This wasn't just another business story. This was personal. For nearly a century, Longbridge had dominated the skyline and shaped the lives of an entire communities. Now it was dying in front of the whole country. And then came the day I never forget. My dad walked through the front door after the closure. He put his bag down and the silence in the house was deafening. 42 years. From a 16-year-old boy in 1963 to the man standing in the hallway in 2005 wondering what was left. I remember looking at him and realising that the huge part of his identity had just been taken away. Not gradually, overnight. The deal his generation had been promised, work hard, stay loyal, and you'll always have security, had vanished. And honestly, I don't think he ever truly got over Rover closing. Even years later, you could still hear the sadness in his voice whenever Longbridge came up. Because for him, Rover wasn't just a company, it was his life. His friends, his memories, his purpose. And in December 2013, my dad passed away. Sometimes I think part of him disappeared when Longbridge did, because people underestimate what happens when someone loses a place that shaped their entire existence. The factory closed, but for many workers, the grief never really ended. Today, huge parts of Longbridge are gone. The giant factory buildings have been demolished. Housing estates and retail parks stand where production lines once funded day and night. To some people, it's just redevelopment, progress. But to many former workers and their families, it felt like an eraser, like an entire world was wiped away. And yes, Rover made mistakes, of course it did. There were management failures, poor decisions, bad cars, missed opportunities. But what frustrates me is how easily millions of people reduce Rover to a joke. Because no company is defined only by its worst products. If every manufacturer was judged solely on failures, then none of them would have survived. But Rover became Britain's punchline. And in the middle of all this ridicule were thousands of ordinary workers trying to hold their lives together. People also have a very strong opinion about the role of the government and the Phoenix Four during the collapse. And honestly, so do I. Because when Longbridge died, it wasn't just a business failure. A community was shattered. Entire families were thrown into uncertainty. People lost livelihoods, confidence, identity, and stability. And the anger from the period never fully disappeared. Even now, when I drive through Longbridge, I feel conflicted. There's pride, immense pride. Pride that my dad worked there, pride that my family was part of that history. Pride of Longbridge helped build cars recognised all over the world. But there's bitterness too. Bitterness over how it ended. Bitterness over how quickly Britain abandoned industries like that. Bitterness over the workers were treated once the headlines moved on. That's why the story still matters, because Longbridge was never just about cars, it was about the people. And once you understand that, you stop seeing Rover as just another failed company.